There's a particular kind of memory that lives in music. Not just a song you liked, but a song that was everywhere. On the radio in the car, at the roller rink, coming through the wall of your neighbor's apartment. A song that just meant something, even before you knew why. If you grew up in the 1970s, you know exactly what that feels like. Because growing up in the 1970s means you remember these songs. Number 7. You're So Vain by Carly Simon, 1972. Before we talk about the song, let's talk about the question that surrounded it for over 50 years. Who is it about? Carly Simon released You're So Vain in November 1972, and it climbed to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 at the start of 1973, where it stayed for 3 weeks. It was on her third album, No Secrets, which, given the song's content, is an irony that probably wasn't lost on her. The track was produced by Richard Perry and recorded at Trident Studios in London. One of the more notable things about it is that Mick Jagger sang uncredited backing vocals. Simon has explained how it happened. She was in the studio working on harmonies with singer Harry Nilsson when Jagger called in. She invited him down, and the two of them ended up recording the parts together after Nilsson graciously stepped back. The song describes a man who is impossibly self-absorbed, the kind of person who walks into a room and the first thing he notices is his own reflection. Simon wrote it as a composite of different men she'd known. She confirmed that the second verse is about actor Warren Beatty. Beatty, true to form, reportedly called to thank her when it came out, apparently taking the whole thing as a compliment. The identities behind the other verses she never fully revealed, though she auctioned off the information in 2003 for $50,000 at a charity event, with the condition that the winner couldn't tell anyone publicly. The winner said the name contained the letter E. Simon later dropped another clue in a re-recording of the song. The full answer, if there is one, has never come out. It didn't matter. The song took on a life entirely its own. It became an anthem for anyone who had ever been treated as an afterthought, by someone who was mostly in love with themselves. By the time the decade was over, it had become one of the defining songs of the era, not just as a hit, but as a statement. And that mystery? It kept people talking for decades. Number 6. Superstition by Stevie Wonder, 1972. Stevie Wonder wrote Superstition in 1972, but it almost wasn't his song to release. Here is what happened. Wonder was in the studio working on what would become his talking book album, and he had developed a habit of playing most of the instruments on his records himself. When he found out that guitarist Jeff Beck was a fan, the two were introduced and began collaborating. Beck played guitar on a deep cut from the album, and in exchange, Wonder agreed to write him a song. The original plan was for Beck to record and release the song first. One afternoon, Beck was noodling around on a drum kit in the studio when Wonder walked in and told him to keep playing. Out of that session, Wonder began improvising. The clavinet riff, the melody, the groove, almost entirely on the spot. Beck later remembered it clearly, saying he thought Wonder had given him the riff of the century. Beck recorded his version of the song with his power trio Beck, Bogert, and Appice. But Motown had other ideas. When Berry Gordy, the head of Motown, heard what Wonder had come up with, he told Wonder the song was too good to give away and needed to be the lead single from Talking Book. Wonder's version was released in October 1972. Beck's version didn't come out until early 1973, by which time Wonder's had already climbed to number 1 and become one of the biggest R&B hits of the decade. Beck was not happy. He said publicly that Wonder had given him the song and then taken it back. Wonder acknowledged the tension, saying Motown had made the call and that he genuinely regretted how it played out. The two eventually reconciled, and years later they performed the song together at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame anniversary concert in 2009. Superstition reached number 1 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 on January 6, 1973. The same week Carly Simon's You're So Vain was finally knocked off the top spot, replaced by the song Wonder had improvised for someone else. It won Wonder 2 Grammy Awards at the 1974 ceremony, Best Rhythm and Blues Song, and Best R&B Vocal Performance. In 2021, Rolling Stone ranked it number 12 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. Jeff Beck never did have a hit quite like the one that slipped through his fingers. Number 5. Go Your Own Way by Fleetwood Mac, 1977. Fleetwood Mac recorded their Rumours album in 1976, and by every account, the sessions were an extraordinary exercise in organized chaos. Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, who had been in a romantic relationship since their high school years in California, had just broken up. John McVie and Christine McVie, the band's other couple, were in the middle of a divorce after 8 years of marriage. Mick Fleetwood's own marriage was falling apart after he discovered his wife had been having an affair with his best friend. 5 people, 3 disintegrating relationships, 1 recording studio, and what became one of the best-selling albums in history. Go Your Own Way was the first single from Rumours, released in December 1976. Buckingham wrote it in a rented house in Florida while the band was on tour, essentially a direct address to Nicks after she ended their relationship. He started with the opening line and built the song around the feeling of accepting something he hadn't fully processed yet. One line in the song was a point of real contention between them. Nicks found it insulting and factually wrong, and she demanded Buckingham remove it. He refused. She had to sing backing vocals on a track that contained an accusation she has disputed ever since. Nicks later told a magazine that it was a message within a song, and not a kind one. Buckingham pieced the recording together over 4 months, working across 3 different studios: the Record Plant in Sausalito, Wally Heider Studios in Los Angeles, and Criteria Studios in Miami. He modeled the drum part on a Rolling Stones track, guiding Mick Fleetwood through what he wanted. The song peaked at number 10 on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100 and helped drive pre-orders for Rumours to 800,000 copies before the album even came out, the largest advance sale in Warner Brothers history at that point. Rumours itself won Album of the Year at the Grammy Awards. It has sold over 40 million copies. Buckingham and Nicks continued working together in Fleetwood Mac for decades, a professional arrangement that outlasted both their relationship and much of the animosity that produced the music. The song they couldn't agree on became one of the most played of their careers. Number 4. Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, 1975. Freddie Mercury had been carrying parts of Bohemian Rhapsody in his head for years, before it was ever recorded. According to friends from his early days, he had developed several fragments, including what would become one of the most recognizable opening lines in rock, as far back as the late 1960s. By the time Queen sat down to record it in 1975, Mercury had essentially assembled it in his mind already. Recording began on August 24, 1975, at Rockfield Studios in Monmouth, Wales. The song consists of 3 distinct sections: a ballad, an operatic passage, and a hard rock section, and Mercury had mentally mapped out each one before the sessions began. Brian May described him coming in with pieces of paper covered in notes, pounding on the piano, describing where each part would go. The approach was unlike anything the band had done before. Mercury had essentially written out all the harmony parts for the middle section in advance. The operatic segment alone took 3 weeks to record. At the time, that was the average duration for recording an entire album. The band worked with producer Roy Thomas Baker, bouncing tracks across 8 generations of 24-track tape to achieve the layering they needed. The vocal overdubs for the opera section alone used close to 180 separate tracks, with Mercury, May, and drummer Roger Taylor singing for up to 10 hours a day. By the end, the tape for that section had become so worn from repeated use that it was nearly transparent. Baker recalled that Freddie kept arriving with more material for the middle section, and every addition meant more tape, more time, more overdubs. At one point, the producer said every time another piece was added, the whole thing threatened to fall apart, and somehow didn't. When it was finished, Queen's record company at EMI were not convinced it should be a single. At over 6 minutes, it far exceeded what radio stations typically played. Queen held firm. They slipped an advance copy to DJ Kenny Everett at Capital Radio in London, who played it 14 times in 2 days after listeners called in asking for it repeatedly. The public response made the case for them. Bohemian Rhapsody was released on October 31, 1975. It reached number 1 in the UK, where it stayed for 9 weeks and became that year's Christmas number 1. In the US, it reached number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. It returned to number 1 in 1991 after Mercury's death, and again entered public consciousness after the 2018 biopic. In 2018, it became the most streamed song of the 20th century. Really Number 3. Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, 1977. In early 1977, the producer and film executive Robert Stigwood called the Bee Gees with an unusual request. He was developing a movie, a film with no title yet, based on a magazine article about the disco scene in New York, and he needed songs. All he had was a rough outline and a sense of what the movie would feel like. He asked the Bee Gees to write a few things for the soundtrack. Barry, Robin, and Maurice Gibb began writing at the Château d'Hérouville studio near Paris, often sitting on the staircase of the building while ideas came to them. They had already been writing a song called Saturday Night, but the title was too common. The Bay City Rollers had a hit with that name, among many others. When they rewrote the concept, the new title was Stayin' Alive. Stigwood initially pushed back and wanted the song to carry the film's working title. The Gibbs told him if he didn't like it, they'd put it on their own album. He relented. The recording of the finished track happened at Criteria Studios in Miami. During the sessions, the band's drummer Dennis Bryan had to leave after his mother died. With a shortage of qualified replacement drummers in the area, the group tried a drum machine, but weren't satisfied with the results. So they turned to a drum track they had already recorded for another song on the soundtrack, Night Fever, took 2 bars from it, re-recorded them as a looping track, and built the rest of the song around that. The drummer was jokingly credited in the liner notes as Bernard Lupe. Barry Gibb sang in his falsetto throughout, the high-register vocal style that had become his trademark since around 1975. It made the song immediately distinctive on the radio. When the film, now renamed Saturday Night Fever, opened in December 1977 with Stayin' Alive playing over the opening scene of John Travolta walking through the streets of Brooklyn, the effect was immediate and total. Number 2. Hotel California by the Eagles, 1977. The opening notes of Hotel California came from a cassette recording that guitarist Don Felder made in a rented house on Malibu Beach. He was working with a 12-string guitar and a 4-track recorder in his spare bedroom, laying down a chord progression over a drum machine, a combination of reggae, Latin, and something that didn't quite have a name yet. He gave a copy of the demo to Don Henley and Glenn Frey, both of whom immediately heard something in it. Henley described it as sounding like Mexican reggae, and that became the song's first working title. Felder made the demos instrumentally, as he always did, and left the lyrics and concept to the rest of the band. Henley drove out into the desert, looking for inspiration, took from films and theater, and used some of the raw material from his own life, specifically a breakup with his girlfriend at the time. Frey described wanting the song to feel cinematic, like a movie scene, where the listener moves from an image of a highway to an entrance of a hotel to the disorientation of being somewhere and not knowing if you can leave. The band recorded the track 3 times before getting it right. The first 2 attempts were made in Los Angeles. The third, the one that became the record, was cut at Criteria Studios in Miami. For that final session, Felder couldn't remember exactly what he'd played on the original demo. He had left the cassette in his home studio in Malibu. He called his housekeeper, had her find the tape, put it in a player, and hold the phone up to the speaker so Felder could listen to it from Miami and relearn the part note for note. When the finished recording was done and the band wanted to release it as a single, the label had concerns. The song ran over 6 minutes. Radio stations generally didn't play records that long. The Eagles refused to shorten it. The song was released on February 22, 1977, and reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in May 1977. The guitar solo at the end, performed by Felder and Joe Walsh in a 2-minute interplay of alternating leads and harmonized arpeggios, was voted the best guitar solo of all time by readers of Guitarist magazine in 1998. The album of the same name sold 16 million copies. In 2003, the song was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. Don Henley, asked about the meaning of the lyrics over the years, has given several answers at different times. The most consistent one is that the song is about a journey from innocence to experience, and about the dark side of the American dream. The Beverly Hills Hotel is on the cover of the album, though the photographers deliberately shot it in a way that made it hard to recognize. When word eventually got out which hotel it was, the bookings reportedly tripled. Number 1. Dream On by Aerosmith, 1973. Steven Tyler wrote the bones of Dream On when he was 17 years old, sitting at a Steinway upright piano at a resort hotel his family ran in Sunapee, New Hampshire. His father was a Juilliard-trained classical musician, and Tyler had grown up lying under the piano as a small child, listening to him play. He later said that was where the chords for the song came from. He had no idea at the time that the fragment he was working out would end up meaning anything to anyone beyond himself. By the time Aerosmith was formed and the band began working toward their debut album in 1972, Tyler had been carrying the song around for years, adding lines, adjusting the structure, never quite finishing it. In the band's early days, they were living together in a shared house in Boston, pooling their efforts to get enough material for a record. Tyler was certain the song could work, but he needed a keyboard to realize the sound he had in his head, and the band had no money for one. What happened next became part of Aerosmith's founding mythology. Tyler found a suitcase full of cash outside the building where the band was staying. He did not tell his bandmates what was in it. He used the money, which by all accounts was connected to people who would come looking for it, to buy a $2,000 keyboard. When those people arrived, Tyler insisted he knew nothing. The keyboard stayed. The song got recorded. When Aerosmith's debut album came out in January 1973, it was largely ignored. Columbia Records had released it the same week as Bruce Springsteen's first album, and put their promotional weight behind Springsteen instead. Dream On was released as a single in June 1973, and peaked at number 59 on the Billboard Hot 100. In Boston, though, it was enormous, one of the most played singles of the year on local radio. The song's second life came from persistence. In late 1975, Aerosmith's manager convinced Columbia Records to re-release it. This time, it reached number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April 1976. Guitarist Joe Perry has admitted he was never that enthusiastic about the song initially. He wasn't interested in slow songs. He came around. Dream On was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2018, and in November 2023, it surpassed 1 billion streams on Spotify. A song written by a teenager in a New Hampshire hotel room eventually became one of the most played rock recordings in the history of recorded music. Tyler described what the song was always about: the hunger to be somebody, and the determination to keep dreaming until those dreams finally come true. As an origin story for a band, it doesn't get much more fitting than that. There's something about these songs that goes beyond nostalgia. They were events. Each one came with a story. The mystery that kept people guessing for 50 years. The riff that almost belonged to someone else. The album recorded by people who could barely be in the same room together. The song a teenager wrote at a piano before he had any reason to think anyone would ever hear it. The 1970s were a decade when music carried real weight. Not polished to perfection, committee-approved, focus-grouped weight, but the weight of actual people, in actual rooms, working through things they didn't quite know how to say any other way. That comes through when you hear these songs today. It's why they still sound like something. It's why a riff that first played on the radio 50 years ago can still stop you cold when it comes on in the car. If you were there for these songs the first time around, you already know how it felt. And if you're hearing their stories for the first time, the suitcase of cash, the cassette played over a telephone, the backup vocalist who walked in by accident, then you know now why they lasted. Songs like these don't stick around just because they're good. They stick around because they're true. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to our channel so you never miss out on more fascinating stories.